Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Horror Movie Syllabus. My name is Professor Victor, and I'll be your host as we go through all the essential, noteworthy, interesting, and notorious modern horror films. If you're new to the channel, I recommend you check out the introduction video. There's a link to that below. It'll give you a pretty good idea of what the Horror Movie Syllabus usually does, which is take a look at a particular subgenre of horror and then pick 3 movies from that subgenre to explore. But today is the Is It Syllabus-Worthy series. This is where I take a recommendation that came from you guys, a movie that I've never seen before. I watch it for the first time, and then I let you know, is it syllabus worthy? Is it worthy of being on the horror movie syllabus? Today's movie is called Bullethead, and this movie was recommended to me by 2 different people, from my guy Steve and my guy Spencer, 2 guys who are friends of mine and have recommended movies in the past and have been very good with their recommendations. And this one stemmed from the animals video, and we did horror movies about animals, and the idea being that. And this is obviously a movie about animals, and the plot was given to me. A high level plot summary was given to me, so I knew that it was about a couple of criminals who wind up locked into a warehouse or something with a rabid type dog, a dog that's out to get them. And that's what I knew going in. And I also knew that this movie was not really that much of a horror movie, more like a crime movie with some action and stuff like that. So I knew going in pretty much what to expect, what I was in for. So that helped a little bit. It helped manage expectations a little bit because it's true. It's not really a horror movie. A spoiler alert, it's not much of a horror movie at all. But that doesn't mean it wasn't a good movie. And both Spencer and Steve really indicated that this movie should be up my alley. It's something that I should probably be into, given my love for animals, given the way I feel about movies like Cujo and stuff like that. Cujo was mentioned to me, yeah, I was kind of looking forward to this one, checking this one out, and did I like it? Did I hate it? Well, let's find out. Like I said, the movie that we're talking about today is Bullethead. Bullethead came out in 2017, and as I noted, it is not really as much of a horror movie as it really is kind of hard to categorize crime caper drama movie, kind of. And we're going to get into that in a minute here, but it really is an interesting movie with a really strong cast by a director that I'm not super familiar with named Paul Solet or Soleil, who's apparently an Eli Roth protege, which gives you a little bit of a horror connection to it. But we're going to get into all of this in just a minute here. First, if you haven't seen it before, the movie is about 3 criminals who are running from a safe heist, and they're trapped in this warehouse that is used for dogfighting. And there is a loose dog in there who has been abused and is, kind of out of it, and is very dangerous and angry and aggressive, and tries to attack them, and they are trapped there with this dog, and they need to figure out how to get out, while they also kind of need to bond with each other apparently, and as they try to avoid the hijinks with the dog and the dog fighting leader, who is on his way back, not to mention avoiding getting captured by the police. There's a lot going on, but not really that much going on. We're going to dig into it a little bit more, but first, the movie's setup is an interesting one. I like the concept of being trapped in the warehouse with this, big, aggressive, dangerous dog. That's working for me right off the bat. I like this concept. I like the idea, the premise being, definitely, dangerous, and yet also like it feels a little bit low stakes at first, but then as the movie goes on, and the things start to ratchet up more, the cops start getting clued into where they are. Their ride can't come get them out fast enough. One of them has a drug addiction, so they keep upping the stakes a bit to make this work and make it feel more threatening, more dangerous as the movie goes on. Very effective, and I'll tip my hat a bit to Paul Solet, who's the director. Solet, I don't know. He directed the movie Grace, which we talked about previously on the channel, which is quite good. And like I said, he's an Eli Roth protege, and I don't see a lot of evidence of that here, but I will say that the movie does have some style to it. Like he does some really cool shots. Like he does POV shots of the dog, which actually work up pretty cool. And doing some research on the movie after the fact, some people pointed out that those POV shots should be color blinded a little bit because the dog's colorblind. I still don't know how they know dogs are colorblind. I've never been able to figure that out. But anyways, yeah, that would have been extra cool if they had done that. But I feel like the POV shots work really, really effectively. I think they're really fuzzy at the edge and stuff like that, and they work really, really well. And he's got some dreamy flashback sequences where people are like in the flashback, like kind of like narrating it. That worked actually really well. I thought that looked cool. Some of the other shots he did were really neat. Like there's a scene where Roy Culkin's character is getting high, and he's like leaning up against the wall, and he's like floating up against the wall. Some cool stuff. Paul Sled had some really cool imagery in here, and it's not a consistently cool thing. A lot of times it's very basic, but a lot of his shots are well composed. He's got a good eye for composition. He's got a good sensibility for how to give you an idea of the space and where the characters are and things like that. So I got to tip my hat. He's done a good job here with shooting this, making it work. It looks good. It's got some nice visual treats for you. It's never flat or ugly or boring in terms of visual style. And he is smart enough to let his actors do their thing, because one of the best things about this movie is it's got an incredibly strong cast. It's got Adrian Brody, John Malkovich, Rory Culkin, Antonio Banderas, and the actors are making this work. Because if there's a big flaw in the movie, is that the dialogue, the story, the material is a little bit rote, if I'm being honest with you. There's nothing tremendously amazing about it. It's a very basic story in terms of like these characters and the characterization of them, and one last job, and the old veteran, and then like the kid who's a drug addict who's a little bit of a liability. Okay, fine, but these actors are top notch, and they're bringing just strong game here. So they're making you interested in this material. The lines work, they crackle, they really come alive in the mouths of these actors. John Malkovich, of course, doing his John Malkovich thing, and Adrian Brody. We always sleep on Adrian Brody. He's an excellent actor, and he's proving it here. He comes off really believable as this thug guy, this career criminal who has this, heart of gold, if you will, and you buy into it because he's just selling it to you. It's a trite and obvious and kind of flimsy character that he makes work through sheer force of will. John Malkovich, playing off of him wonderfully, doing his John Malkovich thing, but doing it in a way that makes him far more likable and much less sinister than you normally think of John Malkovich. Rory Culkin playing the wild card here and playing it well. If there's somebody who gets a little bit short shrift, it's Banderas as the dogfighting ring owner. Like he doesn't get as much to do. He gets a little bit at the end. It kind of feels a little like mustache twirly villainy. He doesn't get as much to do, but the rest of them really do elevate this material and make it seem more interesting than it is. This idea of these criminals with a code works rather well, and it makes me like them, makes me kind of root for them, even though, well, to be honest, I'm mostly rooting for the dog because I'm always rooting for the animal in these situations. I want the animal to win, but you do want these guys to be okay. You actually wind up connecting with them. And I think that's one of the things about this movie that makes it really interesting, even though it also kind of underscores one of the biggest flaws of the movie. And that flaw is that while this premise is fun, it doesn't have a lot of meat on its bone, really. There's not a lot to it. You can't sustain this premise that long. And it's interesting because a lot of this movie gets told in flashbacks and in conversations and things like that, little exposition stuff. But again, credit to the director for making it work. Like the flashback scenes are interesting; they're shot really interesting. And then I mean, dog fighting is a big part of this movie, and I don't love that. I don't love the dog fighting aspect of it. I don't love dog fighting in general. I think it's horrendously awful thing. But I think the movie does a good job of being relatively tasteful about it. Like there's still dog violence in there. You see the aftermath of dog fighting. You hear some of the dog fighting stuff, but largely this stuff takes place off screen. It's shot in a way that implies the animal violence rather than showing it. And I think that was the right choice. And it does it in a way that I felt like it wasn't too triggering or too upsetting. So I appreciate that. Again, gotta give credit to the director here. And then, they're really, tackling the subject matter in a way that makes it very clear that the filmmakers are pro animal. They love animals. They love dogs. Because a large part of this movie is the characters having conversations about how they feel about dogs. Which when I read some of the reviews of this movie, was a big criticism of this. Like, oh, it's just people talking about whether they're dog people. But I liked that. I liked that it was just guys talking about their experience, their personal experiences with animals and why they felt the way they did. Some of the stories are hilarious. Some of them are kind of heartbreaking. The Rory Culkin story about the dog is really rough and really upsetting and sad. And so this movie is largely a drama in that sense. When you talk about these backstories and the animals, the animal connections and stuff, it's really more of a drama it's really not horrifying at that point. It's not even really a crime movie at that point. It's not really even a thriller at that point. It reminded me a bit of like Stand By Me, where you had diverged from the plot a little bit to have these side stories that were being told, and you'd see them kind of playing out. That's kind of how this movie feels, and I say that as a good thing. I say that I think that made it work. And the movie Cujo got brought up a couple times when I was being told about this movie, and it makes sense because first of all, being trapped, by a vicious dog, obviously. But while Cujo had the pacing down right, where you really felt like you could understand the situation being sustained for this time. This movie doesn't have that same ability, but it still found enough ways to make the runtime work through these flashbacks and through the escalation of like, oh, the police are showing up. Oh, your ride's not going to show up. Oh, this guy really needs his drugs. It really kept that tension going throughout in a way that I thought was plausible, while still giving me these drama backstories that worked for me. Again, maybe not for everybody, but it worked for me. And also, like Cujo, I felt bad for the dog. The dog is a tragic figure in this movie, and it's not going to end well for the dog. It can't for dogfighting dogs. It just never can. So it's sad in that sense. But I was still very invested in this movie, in the dog, and in the guys, the criminals that are being terrorized by the dog, and how they don't really want to hurt the dog, and that's what makes me connect with them. They don't want to just kill the dog, and so Steve, Spencer, you guys were right. This is a movie that really works for me. This is a movie that appeals to my sensibilities, clicks for me, is something that really speaks to how I feel about dogs, or how I feel about animals in general. But does that make it syllabus worthy? Now let's find out. So, is Bullet Head syllabus worthy? Nah, no, it's not, but I enjoyed the ride anyways. This movie is for me. It really did hit for me, and I like it because it is basically like a crime thriller character study, really, more than a horror movie. It's not really a horror movie. It really is a thriller slash character study drama. But I like that about it. I like that it had ambition to be more than just like a standard crime thriller. It was trying to do something more, and I appreciated that very, very much. I appreciated that the movie is wearing its affection for dogs on its sleeve. It is really a pro dog movie. Both the characters in the movie and the writer of the movie are clearly dog lovers. Despite this movie being about like dog fighting ring, they're really pro dog, anti dog fighting, very much so trying to show a love and an appreciation for these animals that again resonated for me. This movie is for me, and I really enjoyed that all the characters were pro dog. Even Banderas as the villain is strangely kind of pro dog, even though he's the villain. He's terrible to dogs, so it's weird. Like even he seems to have this like weird respect for the dog. So it really is shining through. I mean, some people might say it's arguably really heavy handed how much they're this pro dog and everything. That's almost like a message movie. It's almost like a little bit hitting you over the head with it. But I'm cool with that because it's a message that I enjoy. If anything, I don't think there's enough dog vengeance action. I appreciate that the animal violence is happening off screen, so I don't have to see it. That's lovely. I'm great. I'm thankful for that. But I wouldn't have mind seeing a little bit more of the dog, getting its revenge, getting its vengeance. You do get some payoff at the end with that, but it's also bittersweet. We don't want to spoil too much, but you kind of know where it's going. To be honest with you, this movie's not one for big surprises. But that was satisfying. But you almost wanted to see more of that. You almost wanted to see, give me a movie where a dog fighting dog gets loose and takes out its entire dog fighting ring of people that have been abusing it. That's the movie I want. I want to see that. But this one, I really like this movie. I enjoyed it very much. It just doesn't make the syllabus cut because again, it's not really a horror movie, and it doesn't really have much of a reputation at all. Like there's some middling reviews of it. Nobody seems to be effusive about it. And considering the pedigree, the caliber of actors in this movie, I'm surprised that it's not more well known. I'm surprised it's not more famous. But I think it's a hidden gem. I think it's a really good movie, despite the fact that it doesn't have much of a reputation, despite the fact that the reviews are kind of meh about it. Nobody seems to hate it, but nobody seems to love it either. I do. I really enjoy this movie quite a bit. I'm glad that Steven Spencer recommended it. Thank you guys very much for recommending this one because this one really hit for me. It doesn't make the syllabus because again, not really horror, but it does make worthy of a recommendation to me and from me to everybody else. If you like animals, if you like crime thrillers, if you like Adrian Brody, John Malkovich, if you like these actors, this is a movie that's worth checking out. Again, it's well paced, it's well made. Again, I'm curious to see what else Paul Schlett has done because Grace is really good. This movie's really good. So very impressed with what he can do. So yeah, definitely check this one out if you haven't seen it. And I'm glad I saw it. So thanks, guys. And now it's time for me to look at the Horror Trivia Pursuit card because it's that time of the video where I try to answer this question live on camera. And you know what? I'm just going to go with the killer category because, I mean, it doesn't really, none of these really terribly align with that. I could do the monster category, but I don't want to do monster because this animal's not a monster. He's an abused dog. So we're not doing that. We're doing the killer category because it's like, we like to see people get killed for doing dog fighting. That's my hot take. Okay, so here's the question. What is the name of the protagonist of the Scream series from 1996 to 2011? And it's kind of cute that they put that time frame there because the answer could arguably change if you want to talk about the series as a whole. And we're kind of digging right into this, right into the answers. But with Scream 5 and 6 and the upcoming Scream 7, that answer becomes a little bit more muddy about who is the protagonist, who is the central character. But for that time period, 96 to 2011, that's the first 4 movies. And there is a very clear protagonist in all those movies. And yeah, I know the answer to this question. I love the Scream series. And yeah, I'm bad with character names. This is well established on the channel. I'm bad with character names, but I remember them when they're iconic. And frankly, this character has become iconic. This is an iconic character, and so I know the name, and I'm betting a lot of you guys know the name as well. It's not a hard question, if I'm being honest, and I'm just cutting on a little bit to give you guys some time to answer it. But you guys probably, again, you guys know this one, right? So lock your answer in. It's tempting to say Nev Campbell because that's really what we all think of when we think of the Scream series and the protagonist of the Scream series. We think Nev Campbell, but the character's name is Sidney Prescott. And again, you guys probably know that. I'd give you a partial credit if you said Nev Campbell, but it is Sidney Prescott. Double check the card, Sidney Prescott. Yeah, that one's not a hard one. Even though it's asking for a name for me, which is usually hard, not this time because, and I'm not the hugest Nev Campbell fan in the world, to be honest with you, but the character of Sidney is a fantastic character. The Scream series, fantastic. We've talked about it before more than once. So, if you haven't seen Scream, go check that out. Good Lord, what are you doing? But checking out Bullethead, I'd recommend it for sure. Again, you'll get an idea from what we talked about today, whether or not it's for you. But check that out. Let me know what you thought of it, and let me know what other recommendations you've got, whether it's animal-based movies or whatever. Because I'm having a really good time checking out these movies you guys recommend. You guys have been really solid in the recommendations. I'm very much enjoying it, so thank you all. Let's keep it going. Until next week, we'll talk about something completely different. I'll just say class dismissed.